All right. Hello, everybody. So today I'm trying something a little bit different. I'm actually trying to stream in live to both Facebook, but also Instagram and YouTube. So we're going to see how this works. I'm going to go ahead and check. This is the first time that I'm trying that. So we'll see if this is actually working and if you guys can hear me and see me okay. All right, looks like Facebook is good. So if you're joining, wherever you're watching from, if you can just put in the chat, if you're on LinkedIn, let us know if you're on LinkedIn, if you're on Facebook, or if you're on Instagram, wherever it is that you are. Um, okay, it looks like, let's see if we can hear me. You guys can hear me here. All right, so it looks like it's working. This is exciting. All right, we are diving into day 5 of our 20 days 20 questions to reinvent our life. And we're starting 2025 with this because this is the time to do this kind of work, to do this deeper dive into evaluating where we are, where we want to be, what changes do we need to make so that we don't just make resolutions and then be like the rest of the world that in 6 weeks is going to have completely forgotten what they thought they wanted to change about their life. So, really quick, I am going to go ahead and I'll put this on here. If you want to grab the free workbook, you can grab that here. I will also put it in the chat, but here's the workbook. You can scan this. This will give you all 20 questions. And if you want a place to kind of write it down, keep your notes totally for free. It's my gift for you for the new year. You can grab it there. And I'll pop that up again at the end. I will also just keep it here in the corner so you can grab it anytime during the live. And I will put it here in the chat. This way, if you would just rather grab the link, you can find it there as well. Okay. All right. So this week we kind of dove into what brings us joy, what brings us fulfillment. We talked a little bit about how we can incorporate more of these into our daily lives, into our future, so that this year we're not just doing things that we're obligated to do, but things that we actually really love that light us up, and being purposeful and planning on that, being proactive, that we're going to actually make time for the things that are important to us. Now, there's a really great quote, this part in the workbook. It says, it's by Karen Allen, I'm sorry. And she says, I thought I need to reinvent myself. I want every day of life to be wonderful, fascinating, interesting, creative. And what am I going to do to make that happen? And that's really the question that we're asking. What am I going to do to make that happen? I was doing a coaching call this morning with somebody on my team, and we were talking about, or I was talking with her about that. I think, I grew up a lot of my life thinking when I get to a certain place, I will be happy. I remember even this as a teenager, when I got to college, when I graduated, when I had my first job, when I got my first apartment, when I got married, when I had a baby, when I hit a certain career goal. I think a lot of us get caught up in that. When I hit a certain career goal, I will be happy. I will be peaceful. I will feel fulfilled. I kept waiting for the circumstances around me to change so that I would change. And the sad thing that I have learned as I've gotten older is it doesn't work that way. I wish it did. I said, I'm so sorry to give you this terrible, depressing news. The circumstances don't change first. We change first. And then our energy and how we show up and respond in life starts to change. So today's question and today is day 5, is what values are most important to me? And how well do my current choices align with these values? So, for a lot of people, the first issue here is I don't even know what my values are. And I will drop in the chat for you if you really have never thought about your values, or you've never really sat down and kind of dug a little bit deeper in knowing what your values are. I do have a $7. It's super cheap. It's a workbook on discovering your core values. I will drop that in the chat for you. I think this is really important. And of course, you can find lots of places online to do this. You certainly don't need to get this workbook. There's many places that you can go online, and they're going to help you really work through what your values are and figuring that out. If you want something that's cheap, that's kind of help you do that quickly, you can go ahead and grab that. but understanding what are your values and what's important to you, and this, I think we have our core values, but they don't necessarily change, but they evolve as we get older. So, or we discover things about ourselves that we didn't know when we were younger. So, I'll give you an example. One of the things I recently discovered really in the last few years about myself, as we've had a lot of things happen politically, we've had a lot of, riots, ways that people have chosen to respond to different current events, that I have a very deep core value for nonviolence. I have kind of now said, wow, I realize that had I been born in a different time period, I probably would have been a pacifist. I really would have struggled with that because, and particularly as we see what's going on in the world, right? I just really struggle with any type of violence against a human. And as I dug a little bit deeper, and this is where I would encourage you when you say, okay, why do I have these values or why are these things important to me? I dug a little bit deeper and I realized that that is because as a Christian, I have a very strong core value that each person has significance in the eyes of God, that God loves all of us the same, that each one of us has value, has significance, has purpose, that there's a reason that you're here. And I kind of knew that those were my values, right? I knew that there was this value of human life, of significance, of purpose, but I didn't realize that that really turned into a very core value of nonviolence. Okay. And so when we know our core values, life is a little easier. I'll give you another example. Recently, I was at a family's house and we were talking about politics. Always fun with family, right? And they brought up a recent current event. And the question was, what did I think about this recent current event? And I didn't really even need to know all of the details. I could go back to, well, my core value is nonviolence against any human. And so there's pretty much, where I stand on this particular event. Right. So when we know our core values, it makes it a little bit easier on how do we choose to respond to a situation? How do we choose? We don't want to react, right? A lot of the work that I do is talking about how do you move from a place of being in constant relaxation in life into a place where we can really show up, think, respond in a way that gives us control, that we take back our power. Okay. And when we know what our values are, it's easier for us to do this. So let's look up the word value. And I'm going to go into the etymology dictionary and we're going to look up, what does value mean? All right. Um, so value by a noun, okay, if we're going to use that as a noun, it comes from the 1300s and it said price equal to the intrinsic worth of a thing. But it's also interesting. It says, if you go back into the Old French, it'll say moral worth, standing or reputation, to be strong, be well, be of value, be of worth. Okay. Um, and so I'm just looking to see if there's anything else on here that's really important for us to look at. This word worth keeps coming up. If you look at it as from a verb and you go into the mid 15th century, it was an estimate of the monetary worth of something. And I like this, consider with respect. So I think that's really insightful. Consider with respect. What do we respect? What do we consider worthy? What are the things that we feel are worthwhile in our life? And these are going to be and what's okay, let's preface this. There's no right or wrong. Your values are simply just a combination of how you are uniquely made in your DNA and then your life experiences that led you to those decisions. Okay, so this isn't, oh, I have better, value or core values. This is just deeply in you how you are wired and what's important to you and what is worth to you. A core value of mine that I have known for a very long time is integrity. I really truly value that I'm a very black and white person. It's right or it's wrong, and that you do the right thing. You do the integrity, even if it doesn't benefit you, even if nobody is watching. I used to tell my daughter all the time, there's no, sometime liars. She would talk about white lies, and I would say, well, you either are a liar or you're not a liar. There's not like a sometimes liar. Now, why is that a core value of mine of integrity? Well, part of it is how I was raised. My father was a very black and white person. He was an attorney and then went on to be a judge. And what do judges do? They make rulings that are very black and white. They're based on law. They're based on precedent, that kind of thing. Now, that made him a very successful judge. It made him very difficult as a parent when there are no shades of gray, right? When it's just very black and white. But I then really took that as grew up in a very rigid environment, which was it was right or it was wrong. And so I became a very black and white person. Now, in some ways, that core value has made life hard. And so this is where we want to establish our core values because some of them will serve us and some of them will make life hard. Now, my daughter does not have that same core value of integrity at that level. She is a very gray person. She can see lots of sides of things. She can see other people's perspectives. And in a lot of ways, that serves her. She has a lot more empathy. She can be more understanding of people and why they do the things they do and their circumstances. Sometimes she feels like I'm a little too judgy like that, right? I remember when I was going through my domestic violence, one of the therapists that I was working with, and we talked about that I really struggled with this very integrity, black and white piece of who I am and my core value. And however, she said, that actually really served me in being able to get out of a domestic violence situation where a lot of women, I think it's an average of 8 times before they will actually leave. But for me, because I'm very black and white, it was like this happened. And then that meant it was over kind of thing. So, as we're evaluating your core values and you're starting to say, what are the things that are really important to me? Um, I would also encourage you to dive a little bit deeper and say, how does this serve me? Like, what is the good? And then maybe what are some of the drawbacks of this value? Where could this work against me? Right. And being aware, again, I'm not going to change my core value of integrity. That will always be very important to me. Um, lying is a core value of mine. People who do not lie, again, has a lot to do with my life experience. I'm not going to change those. I do want to be aware of where can those hinder me? Where can those become a stumbling block or a roadblock? Or like I think of it as a boulder that's on the lane that I can't see on the other side because sometimes our core values stay so stuck in us, right? But when our life is aligned with the values that are most important to us, life is a little bit easier. So let's take this a step further. Let's say you have a very core value or a value that fun is important to you. Having fun, entertainment, pleasure in your life is important to you. But when you actually open your date book, when you open that schedule and you look at how you're allotting your time, you go, wow, I don't really make a lot of time for fun. Maybe adventure is a really great core value for you. You love adventure, but there's nothing in your schedule that is adventurous, right? Maybe you say, my value is my family time and my relationship with my spouse and my children, building memories. This is a really important value for me. But again, there's not regular proactive time set aside to invest in that what we're saying is important to us. And that's the second part. How well do my current choices align with these values? Now, a lot of times people say, well, I don't have time, I don't have time, I don't have time. And I've been guilty of saying this. I will challenge you on that. We make time for what is important to us. We make time for what is important to us. I have never met a single woman, who, if Prince Charming showed up and said, oh my goodness, you are amazing. I want to date you. I want to take you out. I want to take you on a romantic weekend getaway to the Eiffel Tower, and we're going to have this incredible time. And you are just it. And he is Prince Charming. He is everything, you've been looking for with like the cherry on top. I've never met anybody who's like, well, I'm just too busy to date him. Too busy, don't have time for him. We find the time because we find the time for the things that are important to us. If you're like, I don't really know what my values are, another great way that you can kind of see what that is, and I've heard this said many times, go look at your checkbook. Go look at your bank account. Well, I don't know if we have checkbooks anymore, but go look at your bank account. What are you spending money on? That's going to tell you a little bit about what your values are. If you say, well, I have a very core value of being generous, of charity, of giving back to other people, but then you look in your bank account and you go, well, I don't really give my money to anybody. There's now a conflict between what we're saying is important to us and actually how we're showing up and living life, right? I remember the first time I did that exercise and I had to go look and I thought, wow, I guess I really have a value of dining out. I must have a value of going out to eat, right? But when I looked a little bit deeper, I said, actually, that really does align with my value because I'm an extrovert. Social time is important to me. I love food. I love the experience of sharing food, of bonding over breaking bread. It actually does make sense that it aligns with my values, that social time, right? So take a look. What are you investing your time in? What is important to you? If you notice, hey, everything in my bank account is going towards my kids' activities, right? All of my kids that, well, there, that's really aligned. And what are your values there? So, a big part of this process as we're going into this year, if we want to reinvent ourselves and become the best version of who we truly are meant to be. So, this is not about changing who you are. This is kind of digging deep and saying, this best version of me is in here. I just maybe have gotten so cluttered with life. I've been so cluttered with obligation. I've been so cluttered with what other people need that I've kind of forgotten the deepest core part of me. And I want to reignite that. I want to reclaim that. I want to reinvent myself as that best version of myself. A lot of it is awareness. It's taking the time to slow down long enough to really think about what we're doing and where we're going. All right. So, what are some of these core values? Now, you can just Google core values and make a list. The workbook will walk you through. It has the values in it and kind of helps you strategize what those are. But again, just you can just go Google core values if you want, and start to look and say which ones align with me. Is having a lot of freedom and choices important to me? Is having deep, are you somebody who has a core value where you would rather have a lot of friends and a lot of influence, or having, fewer but really deep relationships important to you? Is there a core value of connecting with nature? And then you look at your date book and you go, wow, I never spent any time outside. Because remember, we went back yesterday and we were talking about what brings you joy. So maybe you have a core value of, I love nature. I really want to connect with nature. That's important to me. I value that, but I don't actually spend any time in nature, but I would love to garden. I would love to spend some more time gardening. And then we talk about how do you incorporate that more into your routine. Okay. Um, and And with that, what are the things that are out of alignment? Okay. Like, where are you not in alignment with your values, or what are you doing that really doesn't align with your values? You're like, I put time into this, but it really doesn't align with it. I think also when we know our core values, when we know what's important to us, it becomes easier to say yes and no to opportunities because we're able to evaluate. It's almost kind of having a guidepost. We're able to evaluate and say, does this opportunity align with what is important to me, what I actually value? Yes, great. No, not going to do it. Even if it sounds great, even if it sounds like a wonderful opportunity. I'm in a situation right now where it's very important to me. Again, going back to a core value of mine is integrity. And that also means that anybody that I work with, any vendors that I work with, any companies that I use, like as far as products, services, that it's a company that has a very strong base of integrity, ethics, treats their employees well, that kind of thing, right? Um, and so I have a company right now, and there seems to be a little conflict. I'm getting conflicting information about this vendor, and I'm like, do I continue working? What is the truth here? And do I continue working with somebody that maybe isn't completely operating in integrity? And that's now having me have to use my value as a compass to say, I really need to get some more information before I can make a decision. Because if this doesn't align with my core value of integrity, then this is not a good alignment for me in my life. And here's why I also think this is important, is that because if we go back to the fact that we're energetic beings, that everything we do is energy. And the more we can get aligned with our values, with what's important to us, with who we are, with our soul, our energy becomes stronger. The more that we incorporate things in our schedule that light us up and fill us with joy, our energy gets stronger. And so now we're able to go out and really impact in a bigger, more significant way. When our energy is out of alignment, we're saying, I have these core values, but I'm living and operating over here. It's like this constant disconnect or this constant pushback. This is where life gets hard. This is where we get stuck. This is where we can't move forward. Okay. This is what we're trying to avoid. And I think often we end up kind of out of, I always kind of picture like, let's just visual. I like visuals, right? So let's picture you're walking down this road and this road is in complete alignment. It's got your values on the road. It has your priorities on the road. It has your goals on the road. You are walking down this road. This is an easy path to walk. That doesn't mean that there's not going to be rocks and stumbling blocks. And sometimes you're going to have to climb over something, but the road, it's a safe road. It feels good. It's like, I know I'm aligned in my purpose. When we step off that path into a road that maybe has different values than what we value, maybe the priorities are not our true priorities. Maybe there's goals on here that really aren't ours. We start walking down that road. That's a tricky road because it's going to lead us someplace we really don't want to go. And it's not going to lead us into where God's best plan is for us, right? How do we get onto this other road? Well, I think there's a few ways that we get onto the wrong road. Part of it can be the people that are around us. The people who influenced us when we were younger. Think about in elementary school or in high school. What are the things that you remember people saying to you about you? What are the things that you remember people saying to you about you? One of the things that I heard all the time growing up was, Tara, you talk too much. Who knew that actually that would become a strength of mine? That you could actually create a career talking, right? And so shifting how we hear things, like what were you told? Where is it, oh, you have too much energy, you're too outgoing, or you're too demanding, or you're too bossy. Well, maybe you would make a great CEO, right? Maybe you'd make a great leader, right? What was it that you were told about yourself? Then also, it can be sometimes what pulls us off path is life circumstances, a divorce, a death, a job loss, a family member gets ill, a diagnosis, a disease, a catastrophe, some trauma, something that happens to us, and that can kind of pull us off that path. And sometimes it can just be poor habits. We get out of sync. We take the easy way. So, like, for example, if I say I have a core value of like health, but I don't actually invest any time in my health, there's a conflict there. And that could simply be because it was easier not to. We find this after the holidays, right? It was easy to indulge. It was easy to have that extra glass of wine. It was easy to have more of that sugar. I know for me, that's one that is huge. Sugar is the gateway drug, right? So it could have been just over time, lots of small, little, tiny pivots, little steps that all of a sudden we find ourselves in a completely different path. But here's the good news. At any time, we have the choice to turn around and walk back into the direction of the path that we want to be on. Every single day, our life is the choices that we make. And what we are experiencing today is a reflection. It is accumulation of the choices we made back here. It was a choice that we made yesterday, the day before, the day before, the day before, a week before, a month before, a year before. That is what has brought us right now to this instance today. And the most exciting part of that, wherever you are, good or bad, is that today's choice and tomorrow's choice and next week's choice is going to put you where you ultimately want to be. You get to choose. And so a big part of what we're doing with these 20 days is to say, what choices will I make this year so that my life is headed in the direction that I'm choosing, that I want, that fills me, that gives me fulfillment, joy, peace, utilizes my gifts and strengths, and not life just put me in a path. Other people just put me in a path. Okay. So tomorrow we will dive into question 6. But today, again, it's all about the core values. So I would encourage you a couple things. If you're in the Hey Girl You Can community, I would love for you to hop over into our private Facebook group. Put in there, what are your core values? Do you know what they are? Now, if you are in the Hey Girl You Can community, that core value workbook is in your library. It is in your resource library. You already have access to it. You do not need to purchase it. It is in there. So you can grab that. You can start working through that and then go into our group and tell us, what are your core values? This is what we're here to work together to support each other, to live in community. If you want to know more about the Hey Girl You Can community, you can just go to heygirlyoucan.com. It's $8 a month. And this is the type of stuff that you get access to. Okay. Now, if you're also saying, I really want to have a bigger transformation, I want a bigger change, then our total transformation day is coming up in a couple of weeks. It is 1 day intensive. We work together, we carve out 1 day in our schedule to take a huge transformational shift in the direction and the trajectory of our life. We will dive deep into things like our core values. You will be working on exercises with me with this. We do it in a very small group so that you're really making sure that the choices that you're making are aligned. So if you're somebody who's like, I really like a little bit more mentorship, a little bit more hand holding, I really want to be able to get from point A to point B this year. It's kind of the bridge that gets you there. And then you leave with an action plan with actionable steps, things that you can implement right away. So all those things are available to you, or you can just show up with me for the next few days. I'll be here. We're doing 20 days. Today is day 5. So we've got 15 more days together to dive deep into these questions and explore and find the very best version of you. So I would love your thoughts in the comments. Let me know, what are your core values. I'll go ahead and here, I'll put this back up again. If you want to grab this free workbook, just scan the QR code. You'll get all of the questions and a little bit extra in there. But again, you can also just show up every day with me, and I'll be here both on Facebook, LinkedIn, and on YouTube. So wherever you love to watch. I hope you have a great day. Bye.